What we doing, Team DWC? Welcome back. It's your boy TWP. Wednesday, 6 p.m. Don't worry about the rest. We'll do the videos when we do them. Oh, anyways, but for those who paying attention, y'all know to check the video description for my posting schedule because consistent corn is usually in the building. Let's hide this and click this. TWP. Because it hit different. Slide over here real quick.
I'm upset. But when some little shit decides to take over one of the most profitable territories in the country, I'm beyond fucking upset. I'm very fucking upset. From now on, you're under new management. You will work for me. In return, you'll receive an allowance. Allowance? Yes, allowance. As in, I'm allowing you to contact the sheep. I'm allowing you to enjoy your breath on this car. Now, we're the
This wasn't no move. The smart thing was to say yes, get up, and leave the phone. But then I thought to myself, what if this wasn't it? Fuck you, fuck the plane you going on, fuck them shoes, fuck the socks with the bell on it, fuck your gay ass fairy fat accent, fuck your cheap ass cigars, fuck your yuck mouth teeth, fuck your hairpiece, fuck your chocolate, fuck Guy Ritchie, fuck Prince William, fuck the Queen. This is America. My president is black, all damn wood. Who the nigga? I think he fucked out my hotel room. And if I see him in the street, I'm slapping the shit out.
Spent too much time at the cinema. Nah. Anyways, now that I'm getting my thoughts together, let's stop by these YouTube streets. Check out the Trap House. Y'all know how we do. Y'all know how we do. Trap House. The Trap House. I had a pop-in surprise live the other day for those who saw what happened. Last video, the 420 snack machine. It's doing good. Y'all know how that video went. We did some support returns. I ain't gotta do nothing this week because I ain't got that many subscribers right now. So let's actually get into the other video topic for the day. For those that's paying attention. Let's see content. Y'all want to see the quick review of the videos y'all been watching? Boom. 420 snack machine, 33 views. The YouTube shorts, quick. Down to analytics. Let's see what we doing. About 1.1K. Watch time hours is down. It just went down. Now it's going up. Dang. Subscribers down 1, down 2, then up 3. So that's 3 that it hit a couple days ago. Yeah, but they returned, so hey. Down 3, up 2. Subs. Alright, let's get to this video because it'll be part 1 of it. When I'm doing part 2, I don't know. Y'all let me know when y'all want to see it. Talk about it in the comments.
And so I thought, geez, well, now that I started to incorporate more Eastern medicine, why not then use this as another tool? Why does it have to be one or the other? Why can't it be all of these? Especially because there is research out there.
Welcome to Dog Cancer Answers, where we help you help your dog with cancer. Here's your host, James Jacobson.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the show. Today, we have a special guest, what I'm going to call a unicorn of a veterinarian. I'm genuinely excited for you to meet her. And here's what I mean by unicorn. Imagine a boarded veterinary oncologist who has studied not just Western chemotherapy and radiation and surgery, but has also studied and uses herbs in Chinese traditional medicine. Now imagine that this unicorn vet oncologist is also a proponent of and uses targeted therapies with cannabis as part of her treatment plan for dog cancer. Unicorn. That is our guest today, Dr. Trina Hazad. She has worn many hats in her life, as you will hear, and this is a delightful conversation that I suspect you'll be thinking about well after this podcast ends. Before we get into it, though, a quick thank you to our sponsor, the best-selling book, The Dog Cancer Survival Guide, Full-Spectrum Treatments to Optimize Your Dog's Life Quality and Longevity by Drs. Damian Dressler and Sue Ettinger. Check it out at your favorite place to buy books or online at dogcancerbook.com. Now let's get into the interview. Dr. Trina Hazad, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So you are an oncologist in Los Angeles. I know that in general, veterinary oncologists, there are not that many around the world.
That is correct. There's probably, I would say between 400 and 500 maybe, at least in the country that I know of. Yeah, there's not that many of us.
I'd love to hear why, your journey and then the decision to go into veterinary medicine, and I'm intrigued with why oncology.
My family is from Cairo, Egypt. I grew up as a first generation in Washington, D.C., and my parents actually, unlike a lot of the family back in Egypt, were very pro-animal. And even my grandmother, who grew up and lived her whole life in Egypt, also loved animals. And she would get these little tortoises and bring them home, and she would name them after all the cities in Egypt. There was one that was Cairo, one that was Alexandria, and so...
Did you race the dog? Go Cairo.
We would just feed them, lettuce or whatever it was. So I grew up in Washington, D.C., and I begged my parents for a dog. Begged them, which I think most kids do, right?
Me too.
Anyway, so I had begged for this dog. And then eventually, I think it was like 15, I got my first Labrador. And I wanted a yellow lab after Old Yeller, my yellow lab named Otis. And he was my absolute everything. I mean, he was my
Everybody
best
come
friend.
see
I did
you,
everything
Otis.
with him. And, as a 15-year-old, you don't have a lot of money. And so I had to pay for his food and pay for his vet bills. And so what did I do? I started working at the veterinary. I was like, you know what? Let me work at veterinary hospitals, because if I work, maybe they'll do his dental for free.
You're smart. Okay.
Well, I actually only cleaned cages. That was my job. I cleaned the heck out of those cages, and I walked all the dogs. And one day, the technician didn't show up. And the veterinarian came in the back and said, hey, could you help me do a dental? Could you help me do the surgery? It was a spay. And I was like, I really only know how to clean cages. My job is to clean the cage. I can get my money and pay for my dog's food. And she said, no, just come help me with this. And I said, sure, let's give it a shot. And from that day on, I was helping her with everything. I was helping her with all the surgeries. I was running appointments with her. I mean, I was 15 and a half at this point, doing all of this stuff. And I loved it. And it became more than just giving him my dog Otis healthcare. It was like I actually really loved the medicine of it. And so I just jumped around from vet hospital, worked at emergency hospital, so forth. And then finally, that particular veterinarian that I first started with was like, hey, why don't I just write you a letter of recommendation? You should go to vet school. And I was like, my dad told me I was going to be an orthopedic surgeon, so I have to go to medical school. And she's like, but do you really want to do that? And I was like, absolutely not. I don't want to touch people. I really just want to hang out with animals. She's like, well, then why don't you just do this? And I said, all right, I'll give it a shot. So thank goodness for me, I was able to get into a vet school down in Alabama, a small vet school that she had attended called Tuskegee, which was a historically Black university. And the vet school was probably about 50-50, some Caucasian, some African-American, and then there was sprinkles of others, right? There was, some Puerto Ricans.
Quite a few Egyptians.
Yeah, I think I may have been the only one. But it was such a great experience because to go from Washington, D.C. metropolitan area to Tuskegee, Alabama, the fact that I can say today it was a great experience, at that time I was terrified and I couldn't even understand the Southern accent, right?
What year is this?
This was in 2002. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So essentially, I went to college in Baltimore. I lived with my dog in Baltimore, and we lived in actually a not so great area, but it was $50 a month to pay my rent. And so we lived there. We got through college. I went to University of Maryland in Baltimore, then went to Tuskegee. And then during my last year, I remember thinking, like, I don't know if I'd be ready to come out of vet school and start practicing right away. Like, did I have enough experience to really do that? It scared me to think I was going to go out and treat animals. It was right before my veterinary boards. And one of the instructors said to me, well, why don't you do an internship? And I said, that sounds actually like the best idea. I will not make very much money, but at this point, I was used to not making any money. So what's one more year? Right?
Clearly, you learned to be frugal with your $50 accommodations involved.
Exactly. And so I just needed
$50,
right? And
damn.
so he was still with me this whole time. And so I said, Otis, we're moving. And so right before that
$600 a fucking year. People paying that for a fucking month.
Go around and visit universities and figure out, well, if I'm going to do an internship, I got to figure out maybe if there's a specialty I enjoy most, right? And so I went up through kind of the Midwest and started in Tennessee, went through Purdue and Indiana, and then up to Michigan State. Traveled from vet school to vet school with Otis. We were together the whole time in a car with no power steering and no air conditioning in the middle of the summer in the South.
I see a theme here going.
Anyway, during that time, I got to spend about a month with the oncology service at Tennessee. And I just loved it. I loved it. The oncology experience was the connection with owners, the science, the medicine behind it. But the connection with the owners was something that I had not experienced with any other specialty. You really kind of help them through the journey. And the journey is obviously a very difficult journey to find out your best friend, your family member has been diagnosed with cancer. And so they were so supportive, these oncologists, and said, hey, why don't you just be an oncologist? And the surgeon was saying, look, you have to complete these surgical requirements. And I said, I hate surgery. I don't even know how to do it. Can I just do oncology? And they were like,
this goes back to the first band when you're 15 years old.
I would rather clean the cage than go in and do surgery. And so she was like, you have to complete this until you can finish your internship. So I did it, and then did a residency, which was an additional 3 years in oncology, 2 additional sets of boards. And then after all of that said, where am I going to go? And I thought, if I have to shovel my car one more time, like if I have to deal with walking Otis through the snow, so what was the place that was furthest away that had the sunniest and the best weather? So I moved out to Los Angeles, and 5 years into my stay at this hospital, I realized that I felt like I wasn't giving everything, right? And that I was only giving this conventional medicine. But quality of life, I felt like I wasn't supporting as much, right? And so I thought, well, because I was a great student, why not go back and learn a little bit more? I felt like, well, let's stick with the medicine and go down more the traditional Chinese herbal medicine route. So I did that, and then I honestly became, in my heart, I believe I'm a better doctor. The reason why I felt like I was a better doctor is that I was able to see patients through almost two sets of glasses or two sets of eyes, right? And that I had my conventional Western set of eyes, and then when I wasn't able to succeed, I switched over to my Eastern lens. And then I started to get the skill of combining them. One of my first cases when I started to incorporate Eastern medicine was a very, very sweet beagle mix that came in with transitional cell carcinoma, which is the most common bladder cancer that we see in dogs. And this dog had done fairly well with conventional therapies, received chemotherapy, radiation, did very well, but then developed kidney failure, likely secondary to the disease and the medication that was used to treat the disease. So poor girl was not eating, not doing well, nothing was working. And I said, could you just bring her back in and let me just look at her and feel her pulses and look at her tongue and see. She came in and I said, honestly, it seems like she has a pretty profound yin deficiency. I'm going to go ahead and treat her with herbs. And I want
And
to,
all of a sudden you said, I'm going to put on this different lens,
Yeah.
and now I'm going to look at it through traditional Chinese CCs.
yeah, totally. Let me tell you, I studied it, but I wasn't a believer yet. I had to use it, right? So let me just support your yin and also support your GI upset and so forth. So I said, let's just stop all the other stuff. No more Zofran and Serenia and appetite stimulants. She wasn't taking them readily anyway. She kind of hated it. Let's just stop it all. Do me a favor, 3 days of herbs. Because she really thought she was starting to suffer. She wanted to put her down. I said, let's just try 3 days of herbs and see. I honestly can't tell you if it's going to work. So I started, I think, 2 different herbs. So let's give this a shot, 3 days. Day 3, she called me and was like, oh my God, she's eating. I was like, what do you mean she's eating? It actually works? And she's like, she's absolutely eating. We probably got 3 months of her doing much better, eating, feeling better. And then she succumbed to her disease. But it was literally like, started it 3 days later, worked. And then there was just more cases of these, right, where conventional had failed. We tried it. And then I said, what are you doing? Why am I waiting for conventional to fail?
Okay, so you would start the chemo and also at the same time start the conventional. Tell me about that shift.
There were a few others. Like there was one dog that had what they called carcinomatosis. It was a fluid that had built up in the thoracic cavity, and it was all kind of cancer fluid that had developed secondary to a primary lung tumor. And nothing was working to kind of help drain the fluid. And I started an herb that can help with that, and that started to improve along with a targeted therapy. And so then I think, again, why am I waiting? Why don't I just start it? So this is kind of what I do is what I think is going to work the best. So based off of research, based off of my experience, I'll say, what do I think is going to work the best? Is it going to be a conventional modality? Is it going to be an alternative modality? I start that one first. I make sure the pet tolerates it. No GI upset, doing well, and then gradually I start adding in others. So I might say, hey, I actually think your best bet is a targeted therapy with cannabis. And we'll get into cannabis in a moment. Once I start that, if they're tolerating it, doing well, no vomiting, no diarrhea, happy, great. We're going to start a Chinese herb. Doing well, let's add in a second one. Let's add in curcumin. But everything is done gradually, and partly is because, I don't know, have you taken supplements and herbs yourself?
Sure.
Okay. I'm on, 20 a day right now, right? I mean, we all Chinese herbs, all of it. And what I found with myself is if I just added it all in at the same time, I was sick for a few days. I felt dizzy, I just didn't feel right. And again, I don't think you know until you start it on yourself and you realize, hey, what makes more sense is if I just start them gradually. If one doesn't work well, I'll know if it doesn't work well because I've added it only by itself, right? And so that's what I do with all of my patients, which is I know you want to get started. I know you want to throw everything the kitchen sink. We want to kill this cancer, you get rid of it and make your dog feel better. But I actually think that I'm going to make your pet feel worse if I just throw everything at the same time.
Well, talk a little bit about oversupplementation, because that's really what you're talking about, is this concept of like more is better and let's just try everything. But it can have some adverse effects.
Oh, absolutely. I think there's certain herbs that if you're adding multiple supplements all at the same time, I think the most common thing we see is GI upset, like diarrhea, vomiting, lethargy. Like those are the 3 main things that I would believe that I see if I add too many things. But also they may counteract each other. You need to see what you're adding and you need to go to someone that knows what you're doing. Because what I worry a lot is they come to me and they say, oh, I've started this, and I've started all these different things. But some of these things have the same exact ingredients in there.
Yeah.
And then others, I'm saying, well, why are we adding this and doing this? We're almost counteracting each other. And so really talking to someone through what is the main goal, right, for your pet? Is the main goal to kill the cancer? Is the main goal more like, I think we have a really aggressive cancer. I don't think I can kill it all. I don't think I can put your dog in remission. Maybe it needs to be more palliative in nature. And our goal should be more comfort and quality over quantity. And if that's the case, then let's not go super heavy on these really kind of harsher or heavier herbs, because then I'm going to give your dog an upset stomach. They're going to feel dumpy. Versus if I can support quality, then that might be a way to really, let's stop these, use these herbs for more quality. There's a time where we can do both. If you have a disease process where I can try to hit the cancer pretty hard and support quality, great, but you can't always do both, especially in a patient that's toward the end and has already been very ill from their disease. And that's where having a really kind of heart-to-heart conversation with a client and saying, where are we at? What are our goals? And I'm here to not just support your pet, but also support you and remind you of the goals that we've set at the beginning. Because many times they will say to me, hey, I want to do everything I can, but as soon as they get sick, I just don't want to keep pushing. And I have to be the one at the end to say, remember, we had this conversation. Let's kind of go back to where we were then and make sure we're still on that same path. Or do we need to change that path?
Dr. Trina Hassan, let's take a pause right here. Let's take a break. And when we come back, I want to talk more about cannabis and using cannabis as medicine. We'll be right back. As Dr. Trina Hassan knows, there are so many valid options for approaching cancer treatment. And as pet parents, we want to know all about them. And that is where our sponsor comes in, the Dog Cancer Survival Guide, full spectrum treatments to optimize your dog's life quality and longevity. It's authored by Drs. Damien Dressler and Sue Ettinger, who believe that fighting cancer often requires attacking from multiple fronts. These may include conventional treatments like chemotherapy and radiation, alternative methods like nutritional supplements, or a change in diet. If it's been proven to work, they're included in the book. The Dog Cancer Survival Guide is available wherever fine books are sold, both online and in physical bookstores, and you can support this podcast by using a coupon code.
Yeah, coupon code.
Survival Guide right away, direct from the publisher. It's available either in paperback, molecular mechanics of a molecule and what it's going to do, and so that must be ingrained in just the way you approach.
It totally is. It absolutely is. Everything I look at has to have some sort of evidence. Is it preclinical, meaning it was found to be effective for, let's call it pancreatic cancer in mouse models? Has it been used in human models? And what mechanism does it use to really have that effect? And so a colleague of mine has done that with a lot of the Chinese herbs and looked at the different mechanisms. And I've been using a lot of what she's found for the herbs to figure out, hey, if this pet has this cancer, I'm going to use this herb because it's been found to be effective for this cancer due to this mechanism. Do you know Dr. Erin Bannock?
No, I think we keep hearing about Dr. Bannock.
She's an integrative oncologist, and then Dr. Kendra Pope also is an integrative oncologist. Both of them are pioneers, I would say, in the integrative oncology realm with Chinese herbs. And Kendra a lot into, vitamin C and vitamin D and other therapies as well. And then I've really jumped into the more cannabis route. So it's kind of cool because we all have our thing. We all do something different and we just share with each other what we've learned.
Okay, so you started looking at these 700 plus that are in cannabis.
Yep. And I started to look at all of the literature, and there are tons, hundreds and hundreds of papers that are published on mechanisms of anti-cancer, anti-seizure, anti-anxiety, cardioprotectant, and does it work in an anti-inflammatory fashion through change in actually the perception of pain, not just CBD, which is one of those molecules, right? Remember we talked about over 700. One is CBD.
700 people are like CBD.
That's it.
Hemp oil.
Yes, CBD. Get it from CBS, right? Like,
right.
I think Ben and Jerry's has a CBD ice cream that they're coming out with, right? I mean, it's the thing, it's the fad, but there's also THC, and there's CBDV, and there's THCV, and there's CBD. I mean, There are tons, and many of these molecules have potential medicinal effect. And I think if we can understand how each of these work from a molecular fashion, then we find a better way of actually incorporating it into a protocol, right? So if I know I have a cancer that has a huge inflammatory component, I may want to pick and choose which Eastern herbs, which cannabis molecules I want to be added into a formula, because I'm looking for a mostly anti-inflammatory effect. Versus if I have a very anxious patient and I'm looking for an anxiolytic effect, I may want to pick and choose which specific compounds have an anxiolytic property, right? So
define anxiolytic.
Anti-anxiety.
Okay. So with all these 700 compounds in cannabis, CBD is just one of those compounds, but you're saying there are some of these other ones that you can isolate and use therapeutically, and that's what you're doing.
Well, so you can isolate for, right? Meaning that I pull out just CBD or so. But I think at this point, where research is, we don't know enough to say, if I isolate it, what dose do I have to use to create that effect? So my opinion and my recommendation now is to find formulas that have those compounds within them. Because there is this idea of, I'm sure you've spoken to other people about this entourage effect, right? Which is essentially the combination of many molecules together. So even if I have a very small amount of what they call a terpene, which is an essential oil found in the plant, that small amount of that terpene could actually work along with, say, a molecule like CBD to make it more effective than just giving CBD by itself.
It potentiates it, makes it more powerful and able to do what it's supposed to do.
Exactly.
Which is what? What are these molecules doing for the dog?
Well, so it depends on, again, what you need it to do, right? A good example would be my own dog. He has, I would say, significant PTSD from his past. He was found on the street, and he is terrified, but he's our dog, and we love him. But we had a baby, and our baby's 16 months old. And when he was younger and crawling, this didn't work very well. Stanley, our dog, was extremely anxious, and he was starting to give those typical signs when dogs are anxious, giving the side eye, raising the lip, really, starting to displace his anger and his anxiety. And so we were at a point where we were like, geez, are we gonna have to get rid of him or give him to someone else? This isn't working. So I said, why don't I use cannabis? I talk about it all the time. So I ended up starting a product that was a 30-to-1. So that's 30 parts CBD and 1 part THC. And I wanted a little bit of THC, partly because I do think small amounts of THC, I really do think help with anxiety. I believe in my heart that CBD by itself, it takes a whole lot of CBD as an isolate to work, where I can use a lot less of a dose if it has a little bit of THC, again, to boost that effect. So this product started a few days later, I'm noticing he's actually letting the kid come around him and rub his belly, and he's not growling. And now, I literally just today, my child Landon walked right up to him, opened up his lip, and looked at his tooth, and Stanley's just sitting there and watching him. I'm not saying cannabis is it. You have to do behavior modifications. Everything works together in concert, but I did not want to go down the road of Prozac. And not that I judge folks for using it. I would just prefer to use something more natural to start with. And if with behavior modifications and cannabis did the trick like it, thank goodness, did for our household, we were able to have now a more peaceful household where we're not scared to death that he's going to fight our child.
And remember,
wow. So
I might do a part 2 where y'all can just go check out the video. Y'all never know with me. It's TWP Popcorn.